The Green Stand, a fight for change. Two friends, Sarah and John, were passionate about protecting the environment. They shared a vision of a beautiful, green town, one where trees lined the streets, solar panels covered rooftops, and waste was nearly non-existent. They spent countless hours brainstorming, planning, and strategizing on how they could make their town a shining example of environmental sustainability. However, they quickly realized that their dream was far from easy. The town was filled with factories that polluted the air and rivers, and the local government was more focused on industrial growth than green initiatives. Despite their best efforts to spread awareness and rally people to their cause, the response from the town's residents was lukewarm. Many were indifferent, while others were outright resistant to change. One evening, as Sarah and John sat in their favorite cafe, they discussed their frustrations. They had tried everything they could think of, organizing cleanup drives, hosting educational workshops, and even proposing a new recycling program. But nothing seemed to be making a significant impact. Sarah, always the more impulsive of the two, suddenly spoke up. "What if we take more drastic action?" she suggested. "What if we do something so big that the whole town can't ignore it?" John raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean by drastic action?" "We could break into the old factory, the one that's been dumping waste into the river for years. We could shut it down, create a scene, get the media involved. It would make a statement. It might even force the local government to take our cause seriously." John hesitated. He had always been the more cautious one, but he couldn't deny that. The thought of taking bold, decisive action was tempting. The frustration of seeing nothing change weighed heavily on him. "I don't know, Sarah. That sounds risky. What if we get caught? What if it makes things worse?" Sarah's eyes gleamed with determination. "Sometimes, change requires sacrifice. It's worth it if it means saving our planet." After much debate, they decided to go ahead with the plan. They knew it was risky, but they felt that it was their only chance to make a real difference. The night of their operation, they snuck into the factory, gathering evidence of its environmental violations. They planned to present the evidence to the media, demanding action from the authorities. But things didn't go as planned. As they were about to leave the factory, the security guards spotted them. A chase ensued, and before they knew it, Sarah and John found themselves in the back of a police car, arrested for trespassing and vandalism. The next morning, they were headline news: 2 environmentalists arrested in bold protest against pollution. Despite their arrest, their actions sparked a wave of change. The media attention forced the local government to take action, and soon after, the factory was shut down and fined for its illegal waste dumping. The town began to implement green initiatives, and Sarah and John became local heroes, admired for their courage and determination. However, their personal journey was far from easy. Both Sarah and John faced legal consequences for their actions, and the strain on their friendship became evident. John struggled with the idea of being arrested for a cause, questioning whether it was truly worth it. He found himself wrestling with guilt, wondering if there had been another, less risky way to achieve their goals. Sarah, on the other hand, remained resolute. She believed wholeheartedly in their cause, even if it meant making sacrifices. But as the days passed, she too began to feel the weight of their decisions. She missed the simpler days when they had merely talked about their dreams, rather than putting them into action. Their story became a powerful lesson in motivation and the complexities of taking a stand for what you believe in. It taught them that while passion and determination were important, so too were the consequences of their actions. They realized that true leadership wasn't about making the biggest splash, but about finding sustainable, thoughtful ways to motivate others and create lasting change. In the end, Sarah and John returned to their original mission, this time with a more measured approach. They channeled their energy into educating the town's residents about sustainability, working with local businesses to implement green practices, and pushing for legislative change through peaceful protests and petitions. The town eventually transformed into a model of environmental stewardship, and Sarah and John, though forever changed by their journey, were proud of the part they had played. Their story was a testament to the power of personal motivation, the importance of perseverance, and the understanding that sometimes the path to success isn't always the easiest or most straightforward. It was a reminder that true change starts with one small step, but that step must be taken with careful thought and a clear sense of purpose. After their bold protest and subsequent arrest, Sarah and John were forced to face the consequences of their actions. They had become symbols of rebellion, of people willing to risk everything for the environment. But with that fame came personal challenges. The courtroom was filled with the murmur of reporters as Sarah and John sat quietly in the defendant's seat. The judge entered, and everything fell silent. The trial wasn't just about two young people breaking the law, it was a trial of ideals. The courtroom had divided into two camps, one that hailed Sarah and John as heroes, and another that criticized their methods as reckless and disruptive. As the trial went on, Sarah began to feel the weight of their choices more heavily. What had started as a shared vision of a better world now felt like an insurmountable mountain. John, too, was conflicted. Though he had been part of the plan, he was more reserved, and as the charges mounted, he questioned if they had done the right thing. He found it hard to balance the guilt of their actions with the satisfaction of seeing their town finally starting to change. The media coverage was relentless. Their faces were plastered on every local newspaper and TV screen. But something unexpected happened amidst all the attention. The people of the town began to listen. They started asking questions. They demanded answers from the town's leaders and from the factories that had polluted their environment for so long. Small businesses began to adopt greener practices, inspired by Sarah and John's message. It was as if their controversial actions had lit a spark in the hearts of the community. One afternoon, as Sarah and John sat in the local park, they noticed a group of young people gathered around a recycling bin, carefully sorting through their waste. They were the children of the town, the next generation. Sarah smiled at John. "Look at that," she said, pointing to the group. "Maybe this is what we were fighting for all along, this shift in perspective." John looked at her, a slight smile tugging at his lips. "Maybe, but it's hard to know if we did it the right way." Sarah nodded. "I think it's about learning from our mistakes, too. We can't change the past, but we can use it to guide what comes next." Just as they were deep in conversation, they were approached by an older man, the owner of one of the local farms. He was well known in town for his dedication to sustainable agriculture, but he hadn't always agreed with Sarah and John's radical approach. However, today, his face was filled with respect. "I'll be honest with you both," he began. "I didn't think what you did was the right way to handle things. But after seeing the changes happening in the community, after seeing how people have started to care more about the environment, I think you've started something important." Sarah and John exchanged a glance. They had been so focused on the struggle that they hadn't fully realized the impact they had made. "Thank you," Sarah said softly. "We didn't expect things to unfold this way, but it means a lot to hear that from you." The man smiled, nodding. "Sometimes, change needs to be uncomfortable. Sometimes, it takes people willing to make the hard choices. And you two have done that. Don't regret it." As the weeks passed, Sarah and John's trial came to a close. The judge, acknowledging their courage and the positive changes their actions had sparked, sentenced them to community service instead of jail time. They would spend the next year working with local organizations to help implement green projects across the town, planting trees, cleaning up polluted areas, and educating the public about sustainable practices. The experience was humbling. It wasn't the grand victory they had imagined, but it was meaningful in its own right. Their journey had evolved from an act of defiance to a deeper understanding of how true change could be achieved through education, collaboration, and patience. By the end of their service, the town had transformed in ways they had never imagined. Green spaces flourished, pollution levels dropped, and the local government began to invest in renewable energy. Sarah and John had ignited a movement, but they also learned that real progress came from working together with others, from empowering people rather than simply forcing change upon them. And though they had taken a difficult path, they now understood that sometimes the fight for a better world wasn't just about winning, it was about growing, learning, and making a lasting difference in the hearts of those around them. As they stood together one evening, looking at the sunset over their now green town, Sarah turned to John and said, "I think we've made it. Not just with the town, but with ourselves." John nodded, a sense of peace settling over him. "Yeah. We didn't take the easiest route, but I think we're on the right one now." And so, the two friends stood side by side, knowing that the fight for a better world was far from over, but it was a fight worth having, one step at a time. Sarah and John had learned a lot during their year of community service, and along the way, they discovered important lessons about themselves and the world around them. Slowly but surely, people in the town had begun to shift their mindset. Children were learning about recycling at school, and the elderly were growing organic vegetables in their gardens. Small changes were beginning to have a big impact. Yet, Sarah and John knew that things weren't quite where they wanted them to be. Change wasn't happening as quickly as they had hoped. One morning, while they were walking through the town square, they ran into the mayor. He was holding a stack of papers, his brow furrowed in concentration. He looked up and smiled when he saw them. "Sarah, John, good to see you both," the mayor greeted them. "I wanted to talk to you about something exciting. We're drafting a new environmental law for the town, and this could be the chance we need to push for a greener future." Sarah's eyes lit up. "That sounds incredible. What does it entail?" The mayor explained that the new law would enforce stricter regulations on waste management, renewable energy, and green spaces. It would also provide incentives for businesses that implemented eco-friendly practices. But there was a catch. "We need support," the mayor said, looking at them seriously. "The town council is divided. Some are all for it, but others, well, they're more concerned with economic growth. They're worried this will affect local businesses." John frowned. "You mean some people still aren't on board with going green? After everything we've done?" The mayor nodded. "It's a tough battle. There are vested interests at play here. But if we can get the people behind this, if we can show them the benefits of a sustainable town, we might be able to push this through." Sarah and John exchanged a glance. They knew they had come a long way, but this was the biggest test yet. They had to convince the community that the green future they envisioned was worth the sacrifice. Over the next few weeks, Sarah and John worked tirelessly. They organized town halls where they shared the success stories of businesses that had gone green and reaped the rewards. They spoke with local farmers about sustainable farming practices. They visited schools to inspire the next generation of environmental activists. They even put together a petition to gather support for the new law. Despite their efforts, resistance was still strong. Many people in the town were hesitant to change. They feared the unknown, the cost, and the disruptions that might come with a transition to a more sustainable way of living. One evening, after a particularly discouraging town hall, Sarah and John sat on a bench in the town square. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the now beautiful green spaces they had worked so hard to create. Sarah leaned back and sighed. "I thought we were closer than this," she said, staring at the horizon. "We've made all these changes, but it still feels like we're fighting an uphill battle." John nodded. "I know. It's frustrating. We've shown people what's possible, but change doesn't happen overnight." "But it will happen," Sarah said, her voice firm. "We've already made so much progress. Even if it's slow, we're getting there." John smiled. "You're right. We can't stop now. We've come too far." They stood up and walked toward the town hall, determined to continue their fight. They knew it wouldn't be easy, but they also knew that they couldn't give up. Their journey had already proven that sometimes the hardest battles were the ones worth fighting. They were more committed than ever to pushing for the green future they had dreamed of, no matter how long it took. As they reached the steps of the town hall, Sarah turned to John, a determined glint in her eyes. "We're not just fighting for the environment anymore," she said. "We're fighting for the future, for the people who live here, for the generations that will come after us." John nodded. "And we're in this together." They stepped inside, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that their passion and commitment would keep them moving forward. Weeks passed, and the town's atmosphere began to shift. The efforts Sarah and John had put into raising awareness were finally starting to pay off. People were no longer just listening, they were getting involved. More residents joined the town meetings, and local businesses started to consider green alternatives. Even some of the skeptics began to see the value in a greener future. However, despite the growing support, the town council remained divided. The opposition, led by a few influential business owners, still believed that the environmental law would hurt the economy. It was a bitter tug-of-war between progress and tradition. The mayor, unable to sway the council alone, turned to Sarah and John for help. "You two have built the momentum. It's time to show them that the future of this town depends on the decisions we make today," the mayor said one afternoon, as they gathered in his office. Sarah was ready. "We can do it. We've come this far. We'll just need to bring the community together in one final push." John was more cautious. "We've already faced so much resistance. What if they're too set in their ways to change?" Sarah turned to him, her expression determined. "If we give up now, all of this, everything we've worked for, will be in vain. We can't let that happen." They spent the next few days preparing for what would be their most important public campaign yet, a massive town rally to demonstrate the power of unity and the promise of a green future. They invited environmental experts, local farmers, business owners who had successfully gone green, and residents who had embraced sustainable practices. They also gathered powerful testimonials from young people, the ones who would inherit the town's future. On the day of the rally, the town square was packed. The air was electric with excitement, and for the first time in a long while, Sarah and John felt that everything they had worked for was about to come to fruition. As Sarah stepped up to the podium, her heart raced. She looked out at the crowd. Their town had never seemed so alive, so full of possibility. "I believe in this town," she began, her voice carrying over the microphone. "I believe in the power of each and every one of you to make a difference. We've made progress, but this is just the beginning. Together, we can create a future where we don't have to choose between a thriving economy and a healthy planet. We can have both." The crowd cheered, and Sarah's confidence grew. As John took the stage, he spoke about the importance of protecting the environment not only for themselves but for future generations. "Think about the children who will grow up here," he said. "They'll inherit the world we leave behind. Will we give them a legacy of destruction, or one of hope?" The rally was a turning point. The message was clear: the people wanted change. It wasn't just about the environment anymore, it was about the town's future. The mayor, watching the overwhelming support from the crowd, felt the weight of the decision before him. That night, he called an emergency town council meeting. The following day, news spread that the council had voted in favor of the new environmental law. It was a victory, not just for Sarah and John, but for the entire town. The law was passed, and the town would now officially begin its transformation into a sustainable, green community. But the celebration was bittersweet. The struggle had been long, and Sarah and John knew that the hardest part was still ahead. The law was only the beginning. Now, they had to ensure that it was implemented, that it wasn't just a piece of paper but a real change in the way people lived. For the next few months, Sarah and John worked alongside local businesses, residents, and the mayor to implement the law. They organized tree planting events, helped businesses transition to renewable energy, and continued their educational campaigns. Slowly, but surely, the town began to change. One evening, as they stood on a hill overlooking the now green town, Sarah turned to John. "We did it, didn't we?" she said with a smile. John nodded, his expression thoughtful. "We've only just begun. But yes, we've made something real here."